Greetings, Somatic Warriors. It's Saturday. Welcome back to Somatic Wisdom and the Ethereal Soul, where we talk about embodiment practices, disembodiment, all the things, messages from the body, what kind of tools and resources we have to get back into our bodies, what works, what doesn't work. We look at all the things. We're just getting started here. We challenge bias. We look at things as thoroughly and as honestly as we can. I certainly have my own bias around somatic practices based on my own experience, what's worked for me, some educational experiences and training that I've had. And we just try to look at all of it and have, conversations. Like I said, just getting started here on the YouTube channel and looking forward to getting some more things going for you. But I wanted to do a check-in really quick. It's been a year for me since I actually started this channel. And while most of the content has come in the last maybe 6 months, for the first part of last year during this time, January and February, I was actually unhoused and homeless and living in my car. I didn't have any place to go. I kind of reached out to everybody in my family, and I had just finished a job and realized that I didn't have a place to land. That was pretty jarring. Mentally and physically, it certainly did a lot of things. It both jump-started my nervous system and sent me into a state of paralysis, if you will, that freeze response that happens in the nervous system. That happened simultaneously. A lot of confusion about where to go, what to do, which was met by survival mode very quickly. It was a rather strange experience, and I felt it was important to kind of update that, but also frame this experience of what it was like in my body to be unhoused and homeless and living in my car. There's all kinds of things. I've talked about some of these on my Facebook page and my Instagram page, where I was kind of documenting what was going on as I was trying to get assistance and housing, trying to find hot meals or showers. And part of this system I'm familiar with because I grew up in it, which is part of my developmental trauma, which is part of the cellular memory paralysis psychology of my body, my body-mind, my somatic experience, which led me to body work, which led me to all kinds of things. And one of them being this channel, establishing this channel and talking about embodiment practices and what we do and what happens for us along our journey. I'm almost 60 years old, and my traumatic experiences from childhood often still influence my daily life. Unfortunately, I would love to say that, I've bypassed all that and I've healed all my stuff and my life is amazing. Today, my life is pretty good. I am housed temporarily. I am working. And it's such a 180 from last year, where I didn't have any place to go that was safe. I didn't have any financial resources. I had been looking for work for 3 years, and that was leading to this collapse that was happening in my body. All of those small defeats were weighing down on me, right? We talk about this depression that happens in the body, and that was very present for me. I was trying to stay active as much as I could, but the weather here in California was really tricky last year. We had a lot of what they called atmospheric rivers rolling in, and rainstorm after rainstorm after rainstorm, high wind, very cold. The mountains were covered in snow, and I was in an area where I was looking at one particular mountain that was, the snow level just kept getting lower and lower and lower, and I kept thinking, I have never seen the snow level on that mountain that low. And I've been familiar with that mountain for 45 years. 45 years. And so, my body was adapting to my circumstances and not in a healthy way. And there were some long-term consequences. I've talked previously about this particular arm. This is my left arm. And I was sleeping in my front seat. So this arm is closest to the door and the window. And at first I just had, for actually the majority of the 2 months I was in my car, I just had this really thick kind of fleece blanket, if you will, like from one of the popular catalog companies. I think it was gifted to me by a family member, and I utilized that because I'd had it for a bit. It wasn't something I was attached to. It wasn't something that was going to be hard to clean or wash, and I was fine if it got ruined. And but this arm really was overexposed to cold because I'm sitting in the car. I'm trying to, do work in the Starbucks, looking for work, looking for resources, and complete a training program as I sit in a Starbucks coffee shop, and I'm trying to sit in the window and get the warmth, but every time somebody opens the door, then the cold wind blows. So it was, navigating all these kind of little daily things to try to keep my health up, to try to stay mentally fit, to address each day. And that was becoming more and more challenging as time went on. Lots of closed doors, going to family and asking for financial resources once the car started to break down, which was happening. I had a check engine light on that had been on for about 2 months prior to me realizing I didn't have a place to go, to stay. And and that door was closed too. So I felt like my hands were pretty tied. So my mental capacity now for kind of getting through each day was even more depleted. I'm more, just kind of, I can feel it in my body even as I'm talking about it. I'm noticing that my posture is kind of sinking. And, but I'm trying to remember that as I'm looking out this window on this incredible backyard with greenery and little tiny baby flowers and all of the birds twittering around the bird feeder and the mourning doves scratching around in the bark and the roses behind this particular dainty bush in front of me and the Buddha statues and the clouds as they're rolling in. We're waiting on the Pineapple Express here in California. And, I have a lot of gratitude and recognizing the present moment, but I do still struggle with this awareness of just last year. I was homeless and living in my car. And I didn't have hot food. And I didn't have showers for like weeks. And I had a lot of dirty clothes. And I was cutting the feet out of my leggings so that I could air out my feet, but have layers on the rest of my body. I had a lot of really unsettling experiences, really deeply upsetting experiences. I was assaulted I felt unsafe the majority of the time. I was sleeping in a parking lot. I tried to put myself on the radar by talking to the local police department and asking for resources. I was documenting all of this on my Facebook page because I didn't know who to reach out to at the time to let them know, hey, I'm unhoused and I don't know where to go, and I don't have any money, and I don't have a job, and I can't find work. And I was able to do some piecemeal things. I worked for a little family in San Diego, and so that kept me busy and active. I was there just 1 hour a night helping them get prepped for the next day. And so that helped get the blood flowing and get things circulating, and it helped my mind feel like I was being productive and I was earning a little bit of money. And that felt good. I could feel that like in my body. My spirit felt enlivened. My heart was pumping. I could take a deep breath, right? Even as I just said that, like I'm taking this really deep, full breath. It was like, oh, okay, something has come my way, some type of support for myself, a physical activity. And so I went back there for a little bit in January, but that check engine light was still on, and I was really afraid to break down in San Diego. And so I came back to where I had been, found some local work. A woman needed some help cleaning her home. I put just a little notice at the senior center. I thought this might be a safe place for me to kind of advertise. I've already experienced what happens on Craigslist when I do that. And so I thought, I'll just post a little thing, and got a call right away. And so was able to do that a couple of times. But the car was seriously having problems, and I took it to a mechanic and got the word that it was a pretty big fix. And if I didn't get it fixed right away, that it could be dire. If this one particular thing happened, then it was way more expensive. And so I reached out to the one person that, it was a difficult relationship at the time, and was able to go there and found a little bit of work and worked for about 3 months and saved up the money to get the car fixed. But during that time, I noticed that my arm was still very cold. Even though I was sheltered, my arm was cold all the time. I had to wear long sleeves. I would put my sweater on halfway and then just drape it, like I'd put it on reversed. And so the back was draped across my front and this arm was covered, but this arm was not. And now I'm starting to have some shoulder problems. I was having neck issues right away, and I had to do a little bit of work on that myself. There was a lot of impingement in my shoulder happening. My scalenes here and my neck were very tight. My trapezius was very tight. It was very painful. And I had to do a lot of kind of pinching and unrolling in here. I had to do a lot of deep kind of excavation in through here, which is kind of hard to do. It's not really the best angle to work on myself. But again, I'm saving money to get my car fixed. I don't really have the resources. I didn't have the resources at that time to pay for body work and to get body work done. And most of my resources or friends that I may have been able to go to were in San Diego, and that's not where I was located. So did the best I could with that. But the arm, my arm and shoulder really probably could have benefited from some acupuncture. I'm going to surmise that what I had was in B syndrome, just a cold wind exposure, even a deep cold. And at this point now it's a deep cold. There's no amount of gua sha or cupping is going to sort this out. This is probably going to be something acute, turned chronic, or just something that's cumulative over time. So a chronic condition that was building as I was in the car for 2 months. And, I'm just going to have to do what I can do as things come up. And I could benefit from some acupuncture. I'm not able to do that right now. trying to make sure that I have some financial resources to keep my bills paid and to keep building on that so that I can get into more suitable housing for myself, and have a plan. And I do have a plan. So part of that plan involves continuing to take care of my body. If you sleep in a twin bed or on a couch or on a futon couch, you'll know what I'm talking about. Or if you share a bed with several other family members, if you're like some cultures that live multi-generationally, maybe you're sharing a bed with cousins and siblings, or older ancestors, and that makes it kind of tight. It's a little narrow. It's hard to roll around and stretch a leg out, something like that. And I was sleeping on a couch in one position, and I could fold one leg and pull it out, just kind of prop it, but the other leg would fold out. But the right leg wasn't really able to do that, and I started to notice some pretty severe hip pain. That was also probably partly because of being in the car, not being able to stretch because I'm living in the car. And all of the things that we do in the day, standing with our legs wide stance. We call this a horse stance in Qigong. Maybe knees are not soft, but our legs are like underneath us. We're grounded. We're almost Wonder Woman pose, right? We're thinking about the world. We've got plans. We're fully engaged in the body. Those legs are triangle, right? And I wasn't feeling that. Mentally, I wasn't feeling that. Spiritually, I wasn't feeling that. Psychologically, I was not feeling that. And that was manifesting physically in my body. I was not feeling that kind of power and strength in the lower half of my body. And I certainly wasn't feeling it in the upper part of my body, not at first. Eventually, pretty quickly within the first 2 weeks of January, I started to receive some gifts, some buoyancy, some financial support and recognition that was unexpected, and a complete shock and a surprise, and very much deeply appreciated as friends started to see my posts. I was posting probably 2 videos a day, and people started helping me financially to get hot food, to get a hotel for a couple of nights. I had a campsite where I was able to go and take a shower, and put gas in my car, even help pay my insurance, my car insurance, which isn't very much. It's not, it's an older car. It was my mother's car. But and thank goodness the tags weren't due during that time or something. It wouldn't have been a lot of money, but when they did come due in August or September, I also needed to pay for a smog, so that I didn't have that financial burden during the time I was unhoused. I was deeply appreciative of, but that was nourishing for me psychologically, because I felt like I wasn't alone in the world. I felt like I was being witnessed, and the struggle was being witnessed and seen by the people around me, and even people that I hadn't talked to for a long time that I'd known years ago, made contributions to me and said, you did this thing for me, and I was like, wow, that was like 3 decades ago. Like, that's so amazing that this person would do something so generous for me. And so that helped my confidence a little bit to remember, I have been there for people. I have showed up for people, and that they are showing up for me in this way was was huge. It was just so huge. And I, continued on that path and on that journey, but each day I'm navigating my health and my safety and my wellness. And am I fed? Here's one that is a little more disclosure, but this is all over my Facebook page, so I'm not telling you anything that I haven't already told hundreds of people. As a woman of almost 60 and as a mother of two, my body is not what it was when I was 20, before I had kids. And so at about 11 o'clock, when the big box store is getting ready to close, let's say 10:30, I'm running over there to use the bathroom before they close for the night. Now, they don't open till 6 or 6:30, so I've got like a 7-hour window. So I need to actually stop hydrating 4 hours or something before 10:30, which is hard to do when you have low blood pressure, and it's important to stay hydrated in order to keep your blood pressure at a certain level, right? I have a tendency to faint. I've done that just a couple of times, mostly heat related, but low blood pressure is, every time my blood pressure gets checked, they ask me, are you feeling okay? Have you eaten? Or do you feel faint? And I feel like they're gonna go, into some 911 mode for me. And I'm like, yeah, my blood pressure's just low. But one of the things they tell me to do is to stay hydrated. So there's this whole domino thing that's happening as I try to stay hydrated but cut it off so I don't have to pee beyond 11 o'clock, and there's no gas stations close by that are open. The one that was close, a little janky. One night I got there and somebody clearly was passed out in the bathroom because I waited for a really long time, and even the clerk at the counter was like, I'm not really sure what's going on in there. It's like, I'm gonna leave. Luckily for me, the Starbucks in the parking lot where I was located, they opened at 4:30 in the morning. So then that narrowed my window to 5 hours. Yeah, about 5.5 hours. I didn't like going into Starbucks at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning with sleep in my eyes and, hair all askew and in my sweatshirt and jammy bottoms. But there is no dignity when you're unhoused. There's no vanity, there's no pride, there's no self, there's no, you're visible but you're invisible when you're unhoused. And it's embarrassing, it's a demeaning experience, it's degrading the way people look at you. And I'm not a good liar. My kids have told me this repeatedly. I don't have a good poker face. I don't think I have any kind of poker face actually at all. And I struggled around making up a story about, being there every other day or 4 or 5 days a week at the Starbucks. And, I've watched a lot of shows and movies and, things like that, and read some books. And one of the things I've heard repeatedly is that they tell you to stick as close to the truth as you possibly can. I've heard that numerous times. And so, the girls in the Starbucks, the morning shift is there because I'm there at 5 o'clock in the morning peeing, and then the afternoon shift, and I'm sitting there at the work table with my computer and all my notebooks, and I'm typing away and, trying to stay warm, trying to stay fed. Starbucks is not the best food. It's very expensive. And so I would eat in my car. I would do the Trader Joe's or the big box store, and I'd have my breakfast in the car and then go and sit. But you can't just sit there. You got to get a coffee or something, a juice, which was cold. And in my body, cold food didn't feel good. It was cold. It was so cold those 2 months and beyond. The day I left that area and drove to the temporary shelter where I was going to be, it hailed. This was at the end of February. So cold food, cold beverages, those things being in a cold environment. I was already in the car that was cold 24/7, trying to start the car and run the heat. And running the engine was the thing that was going to trigger this, mechanical disaster, catastrophe for the car. It involved the intake manifold. And so, it was a lot. It was a lot. My jaw started to hurt. My hips were tight because I'm sleeping in this linear position, which I was describing. I'm on the couch, it's linear. I'm in the front seat of the car, it's linear, and even trying to sleep on my side, if you're sleeping in a seat that is even pushed back as far as you can, there's this bend in the seat, and my hips don't quite bend that way if I'm sleeping on my side, right? They might bend a little bit, but for the most part, there's not a lot of bend happening. And, there have been a lot of residual effects from that. And so I started walking quite a bit once I got into my temporary shelter at the end of February, March. But the stretching was becoming a problem. There was really not a lot of good place to do that. There was no floor space to sit and really yield to the floor, lean into an open full body stretch, yielding to an opening of my life, yielding to an opening of my heart and my spirit and the psychology of what was happening in my world. And so I was really struggling with that. And so the tightness built up and built up. And, now where I'm at, it's taken some time. I've been here a month, and I have done quite a bit for myself. I set up a routine for myself that's pretty flexible. I'm being much more generous with myself, but I am engaged with more self-care practices, and I am doing a lot with my mind and my body. And I'm staying focused in what I can do, what is working, what gives me joy, my sense of humor, the fact that I can lay on the fold-out bed behind me and stretch the legs in every direction and have this more full experience in my body, and it's very lovely. And I can fold that up and use the entire floor space if I want. I don't, there are a few yoga things I don't have replaced, so they were damaged in a flood a couple of years ago. And so I don't have the finances for that. I'm choosing to really try to save every penny that I have in case something does happen with the car. It is 20 years old. So I do have to be aware that, big things might start to break down, and she does need breaks. So as I am nourishing my body, caring for my body, I'm aware of the impact that my being homeless, unhoused for 2 months and living in my car, and while that is a form of shelter, it was very challenging. Certainly it's not the same challenges as, living under an overpass, freeway overpass, or next to a freeway on-ramp, or not having a tent, or in a tent but on the ground, and the ground is fucking cold. Even with sleeping bags and blankets and all that stuff, if you have ever walked outside in bare feet, you know what I'm talking about. If you've ever walked outside in socks, you know what I'm talking about. And that kind of weather exposure, damp ground, cold, heat, all of those things can come into the body over a period of time. Even now as I'm sitting here, my right arm feels temperate. My left arm is cold. There's no fan on. You know, I'm in a house with probably dual glazed windows, and this arm just sitting here is colder than my right arm. My left arm is colder than my right arm. And what I'm noticing too is that as I am being more physically active, I mean, my guns aren't back. You know, as a body worker for 2 decades, my guns aren't back. That's probably not going to happen, but I'm working with a 5-month-old, and I'm starting to get some arm strength back. I'm starting to get some leg strength back as I'm climbing in and out of this playpen, as I'm lifting myself up from the floor. You know, I sit on the floor with the baby, and then we rise together. And so that is helping to exercise muscles that have been pretty sedentary for a very extensive period of time, much longer than I would have wanted or thought that was, you know, going to be the case. And so it's taking some time to get my body to a place where it feels stronger, nourished. And one of the things that I'm noticing, I discussed earlier about the bathroom window and trying to stretch it and not drink too much water, so I didn't have to try to find a bathroom at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Because of all of the activity that I have, my bladder control, if you will, my ability to hold my bladder longer has improved. And I knew that was going to happen. That's a Kegel thing. That's a pelvic floor issue. And being able to strengthen the core, that makes a big difference. And so, you know, there were some things I had to do to get through those 2 months that were pretty degrading, so that I wasn't, you know, oh, I have to go to the bathroom right now, and I have to walk across a major parking lot. I may not make it, no matter what time of day it was. It's one thing to be on your couch and to walk down the hall and use the bathroom, but it's another thing to be parked in a parking lot and to try to walk in any direction and find a restaurant. You know, the big box stores, you can always use the bathroom. Coffee shop, most of the time, you can always use, especially Starbucks, you can always use the bathroom. There may be a code. Again, don't wait till the last minute. But bathroom access is a privilege. It really is, to be able to just go, use your bathroom, shut the door, lock it, stay in there as long as you want. All of that is a privilege. There are so many little things when we're talking about access and privilege. So right now, me being where I'm at, that's complete privilege for me. It is attached to work, and I'm very grateful for that. We have a lot of fun over here. It's kind of ridiculous. And we have great communication over here, and we're able to, you know, laugh, and there's a lot of flexibility, and, you know, it's really good. It's really, it's just delightful, you know, it's just delightful. It's sacred work, and I'm deeply appreciative for it. So, you know, just acknowledging the difference that a year can make. And for someone who's almost 60, you know, at 58, finding myself homeless and living in my car, and then turning 59 and thinking, wow, you know, I'm like 3 years away from retirement. What's in there? You know, Social Security. What, you know, and I'm literally unhoused and can't find employment. Ageism, declining bodies, aging bodies, access to resources, access to safe and secure housing, assault to the vulnerability of being a woman unhoused, even in a car. food, access to hot food, access to all of the things. And the resources that you hear about, oh, just call 211, or oh, just go to the, Department of Social Services, where you stand in line all day and can't take anything in with you. They'll confiscate anything, a lighter, they don't care. Leave messages, don't get calls back. Send emails, they don't email you back for 2 months. If I had been housed and sent an email to the mayor's office and was in dire need of financial rental assistance, I would have lost my apartment by the time they got back to me, which was 2 months. Now I was already permanently unhoused. I was temporarily sheltered. That was attached to work. And that was a window of about 2 months. And thankfully had a place to go back to because that job had already ended by the time they got back to me. So all of those things are problematic. And so for anyone who thinks that getting housed is easy, or getting into a food program or a cash assistance program, dig a little deeper and do a little bit more research, and you'll find out just how difficult it is. And I have talked about this previously. Once you're in a system, it's very difficult to get out unless they boot you out. And if you're not set up with a strong foundation to let go of that resource, or to lose that resource, that can just drop the bottom right out of your bucket. Right now you don't have that, and now what? And so that can be a particularly big challenge. So navigating all of those things, it's not just, oh, I'm just going to get into the system and get my stuff together and then get out whenever I'm ready. That's not how it works. They track everything. And the minute, I think one of the examples I had given around shelter and housing, and everybody deserves safe shelter and housing. People deserve to be warm and to be able to enjoy hot food, warm meals, nourishing food, to sleep in a safe, warm area, whether that's a bed or a floor that is in a shelter that is not the damp, cold concrete, hard concrete out under a freeway overpass. They have low-income housing, and you can only, there's a ceiling on that. There's no maximum wage, but there is a maximum that you can earn when you're in low-income housing. And if you go above that, you lose the low-income housing. The minute you reach that ceiling, you no longer qualify for the low-income housing, right? But the gap between low-income housing and what the market rates are is huge. That's a very big gap. And so trying to meet this, fill this gap is, I don't know how people do it. That's when you have to jump to renting a room. I've reached the ceiling. Now I need to go find a room for rent that maybe isn't in an area close to my work because rents are bananas. And just to share now, the rent increase ban has now expired for LA. And so right through the ceiling, like they weren't high before. And so that's really just going to increase the amount of homelessness. It's already beyond, I think I have an email with some statistics somewhere, and I will do a video on my Instagram page around that. But, this body right now is very grateful. I'm nourished, I'm eating hot food. I have hot coffee. Well, it's a little room temperature right now. It was hot earlier. And I, have a beautiful view. I can come over here and take a nap if I want to and be warm. I am working this afternoon, so I have a couple hours with the baby. But I have a lot of gratitude that I'm able to take care of my body, that I'm able to downregulate my nervous system, that I'm able to meditate a little bit more productively, that I'm able to stretch a little more slowly and mindfully, and that I, don't have to stretch in a parking lot at a park somewhere, because that's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. Everything you do is embarrassing when you're homeless, because that's the context, right? If you're running in somewhere and you've been out shopping all day and you're like, I just want to use the bathroom, I'll grab some lunch or whatever. That's one thing. But when you're homeless, there's a mindset that happens for you. And maybe you're a little disheveled, or you've been wearing the same sweatshirt for a couple of days. And but whatever the scenario is, there's a mindset that tells you, I don't deserve to ask to use the bathroom, or I don't deserve to come in here and ask for a cup of hot water to make soup in my car. Or I don't deserve to ask for hot water so I can make myself a cup of tea before I go to bed, which I'm not supposed to drink because I'm going to have to pee in 2 hours and nothing's going to be open. Whatever the dialogue is, whatever the conversation is, the context, really, that container means a lot. It's really, it sets up a few things. And a lot of things were revealed to me during that time that I was unhoused and homeless, and that has shaped some of my relationships. There were quite a few things, relationships that were impacted, and that really hurt my heart. And that sense of betrayal, that level of betrayal, is something that I've been working with and processing, and almost done with that, because I have realized that at almost 60 now, time is running out for me. I may have like 30 years left if I'm lucky. So 2/3 of my life has gone by, and I'm really looking more at the quality of my time versus the quantity. And I certainly don't want to make time spinning my wheels about people who don't value me, who don't care about me, who don't love and respect me or cherish our relationship. I don't have the time anymore to invest in that. And when I was younger, I did a lot of that, because the relationships meant a lot to me, and I valued them, and they still do. The relationships mean a lot to me, and I value them, but I also need to recognize that I mean a lot to myself, and I value my time and my relationship with the time that I have left. And so how do I prioritize that? I get to put myself first now. I think it's time that I do that at this age. There is no more, I want to have you in my life. If they don't want to be there, that has never been an issue. You don't want to be in my life? Fine. And even that, prioritizing that in my body felt like, these particular relationships are higher on the priority list, so I really should give them more priority. And then realizing, oh, yeah, maybe that's kind of the same thing, which has been sad and heartbreaking. Not true of all my relationships, but for some of them. And, I think we learn that there's a wisdom that comes with age and aging bodies and aging minds and hearts. As we recognize certain things, we reach certain milestones. But, the care and the nourishment required for an aging body can be pretty extensive, depending on how we're aging. Another privilege, access to medical care. It's all connected, kids. I'm not even gonna get into that. You know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't send me a message, send me an email, make a comment in the comment section. Valencia, what are you talking about? And then we can talk about that further. But, just recognizing the grace of time, that 1 year ago, You know, I had hit some kind of a bottom based on social constructs, high rents, low wages, ageism in work, skill sets, career transition. All of those things were at play when I was, you know, making these shifts. That all happened in March of 2020. And it started in March of 2020. And so, you know, the level of frustration, that was all in my body. I've talked about this in other videos, massage that I received and the healing that came from that. And so I just wanted to do a check-in with folks who maybe aren't familiar with what has happened for me in the last year, how I came to start this channel, my background. I am a published author. My book, Chasing Shade, Living with Developmental Trauma, that can be found on Balboa Press. They're the original publisher, but you can also find the book on barnesandnoble.com, Target, Walmart, Amazon, of course. Used copies probably available now. The book was released in 2021. And so, you know, it's all connected. It's all connected. This experience of our somatic wisdom and how that manifests in our life, and how we can approach it. And I haven't really done too much talking about art, and of course I will be doing that at some point, because art is the kind of the third pillar, I guess. Yeah, the mind, the body, and the art kind of all go together. And I did do a quick little video about an event that happened the other day, last week now at this point, and where some art process was needed to get grounded again, to get my feet back underneath me. And so there will be more talking about art. But in the book, in my book, Chasing Shade, Living with Developmental Trauma, there's a ton of art. That was part of the healing process for me around my developmental trauma. Developmental trauma being trauma you experienced during the developmental years as a child. And so, you know, the recovery is slow, just like the arc of kind of this downward spiral can be slow sometimes if it's chronic. And I just have a lot of gratitude, a lot of deep gratitude for my own perseverance and my own awareness around what I needed, knowing myself and what works for me and what doesn't, I think was of great value. So I hope that you are all well and taking good care of yourselves. And I will see you next time on Somatic Wisdom in the Ethereal Soul. Take care.